Welcome to the Small Steps, Big Wins podcast. I'm dedicated to helping you take control of your life. Together, we'll explore practical tips, expert advice, and inspiring stories to help you overcome obstacles and achieve your goals. Making small changes is possible and can lead to big results. Are you ready? Let's go do this. So, Lynn, I'm excited. Are you excited? I'm excited for our conversation.
I am so excited. Anything where we're talking about wins and accomplishments and all the amazing things that come with that, I'm excited about.
Yes. Well, welcome to the podcast. Your book, Enough with the Secrets, Mama. First of all, it has an intriguing title. Absolutely love it. Enough with the Secrets, Mama. That alone made me want to talk to you. So I got to figure out what's going on here. So I'll let you introduce yourself. And then I also want to know how that title came about.
Absolutely. So yes, thank you so much. I appreciate this opportunity to talk to you about my book and a little bit about myself. So I am Lin Green. Lin Mary is my full name. Everyone calls me Lin. I am an advocate. I'm an author. I am a blogger, an independent consultant here in Orlando, Florida. And I decided within my conversations with women, especially with women, but of course this applies to men too, right? Because we all have mothers. I found that there was a need for some healing in mother-daughter relationships. So I decided that Enough with the Secrets, Mama was going to be my debut work of love, I call it, as I'm helping people heal through a lot of those maternal heartache issues and sharing my story of how we overcame a lot of those struggles, having traveled here from the Dominican Republic. I speak a little bit about our immigrant experience, but pretty much just how my life unfolded. And when I realized that I was going to be on your podcast, it really excited me because a lot of what you speak of and the core of what this podcast is being able to tap into those things that we can overcome those difficulties and continue to build and grow. And the way you encourage people through this is amazing. So I am excited to talk some more.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Well, feel free to dive a little bit more into some of those challenges that you had to kind of paint a picture for those listening, just to, find out a little bit more and then share your struggle. Like, what are some of the small steps that you've done that actually brought you to the realization that, it might be a good idea for me to write this book and share my story, because a lot of people have stories, but they don't take the step to put pen to paper and then, put yourself out there and be vulnerable.
Absolutely. So the core of the book is certainly trying to understand. We know our parents did the very best that they could with what they had. And I had come to a part in my healing journey with the experience with my mother that I had to understand at the core who she was and why she was the way she was. I internalized a lot of the feelings of I would call it just my own self perception of neglect in certain areas, core foundational relationship between mother and daughter issues. And I had to really take a step back and dive deep into where she came from and how she became the person that she is. Very strong-willed, independent. I get all of my strength from her. I know that for sure. But certainly there's a lot of talk of forgiveness through the process of healing, and not just forgiveness of others, but forgiveness of self, being able to give yourself grace as much as you would give others grace, and being able to push through those circumstances, because life can get really rough. And on top of just the normal day-to-day living, we have to understand that our own experiences, and especially if we have experienced some trauma in our lives, it makes it a little bit difficult sometimes to just live and accomplish the things that we want to. So there's a lot of, the expression of my journey, the highs and the lows, and ultimately wrapping it up at the end with some skills and understanding, that we all have a purpose and we have to grow from those experiences, using those as stepping stones to greatness, and being encouraged through the process.
Hmm. You
Mm.
mentioned a lot there. We'll come back to skills in a little bit, but I'm really curious, as you were going through your journey, was your mom involved in your journey, or as you were trying to discover who she was and learn about her and understand who she is and how that shaped you, did she was she aware of a lot of this, or was this something that you had to kind of discover on your own? And how did that play out?
Yes, it was a little bit of both. So initially, there was a lot of internalizing and trying to figure it out myself. Until it got to a point where it was really starting to get emotionally damaging for me to just experience it and not express my concerns. And I did go through a period of time where I had to seek some outside help, because I'm a proponent for mental health, and I'm a major mental health advocate. And I think it's important for us to be able to reach out to others in moments where we feel like we need some assistance, where we otherwise don't have the strength. So
Mhm.
through that
I agree.
process, hmm through that process, I was encouraged to speak to her. I did not have the strength or the willingness to be able to do it myself. A lot of it was mostly out of respect, because within our culture, it's almost frowned upon, to say, "Mom, I don't think you're doing well in this area, and this is how I'm feeling." It's almost like you're just the child, and they're the
Yeah.
parents, and you just have to do what you have to do, and that is well rounded pretty much within all cultures, I believe. Um, Ultimately, I did express it, and it wasn't well received as I expected.
Probably
So
not. Yeah, I mean, I'm
yeah.
just I'm just sitting here picturing my own adult children, but coming back to me and telling me that, but I'm a little more proactive with them. I just tell them outright I sucked as a mom and I know I dropped the ball. So let's just start there at the baseline. Here's what I would do differently. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
It takes a
And
lot of
again,
self-awareness to do that.
oh my goodness, absolutely. And it came from a place of love, and it was
Oh, of
almost
course.
it was a cry out for, "Mom, I understand I am the strongest of all the children that you have and the most responsible of all the children that you have, but I still need you."
Mhm.
It was a conversation, like, that's pretty much how it went. Um, and so, it was more, she took a defensive response to that. And after that, we had to establish some boundaries, and through those setting of boundaries, we grew, as a mother
Mhm.
and daughter relationship. She then understood more where I was coming from, and we have healed, to the place where we are now. I am so very grateful for the journey. And so I wanted people to be able to experience that through my story, and relate to the a lot of those difficulties, and be able and know that you can come through it. And the most important thing is that it's not always going to be the happy ending that you expect it to be, but understanding that it is what it is, and being at peace with that, and still finding joy in
Mhm.
that place, knowing that you have spoken your truth, and that you're growing and helping them grow through the process.
Yeah, it's letting go of the expectations and letting go of the outcome. It's just how you carry yourself in that moment because
Yeah,
honestly, all we have, is that moment. Would you be
yeah.
willing to share a specific boundary that you had to set? Because we hear about we hear people talking about, we have to set boundaries in relationships and so forth like that. But sometimes it's hard to practically play that out. What
Mhm.
was something in your life that was a boundary that you could share that might help somebody else?
Mhm. That I had to keep myself as a priority,
Mm,
and so respecting that in that space, there's a routine that I follow, and these things are important for me in order for me to be my best self. And having her understand that during this block of time, this is me. This I and she has attempted, to contact me even in those moments. But it's almost like when we speak and I reach out to her throughout the day, she understands that, and so she tells me, "I didn't call you earlier because I know you've got a lot of stuff going on."
Mhm.
That's a major win for me because prior to that, it was me feeling like I needed to be available all the time.
I was just ready to say 24/7, so you set a
Mhm.
boundary of not being available for 24/7. Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, that's not just true for mother-daughter relationships. I know that there are people out there that have, ex-spouses or, that they're divorced or separated or whatever, and they had to set boundaries,
Mhm.
around that other partner that thought they
Yeah.
had access
Mhm.
24/7, and that's sometimes
Yep.
hard to do because when you're in that serving mode and you wanna help people,
Mhm.
it's hard to say, "You know what? I'm not gonna get back to you right now. I can get back to you later on." It's not that you're
Yeah.
not important to me, it's just that I have these other things
Right.
that I have to do. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
S
That was
Yeah.
critical.
Yeah, and I know there's a part of your history in your past where you did have trauma. You mentioned that before, like, all of us have come how all of us have experienced some type of trauma, and it's interesting, I also wrote a book, it's not coming out until September, and there's a section in there on trauma and what trauma is to one person, it may not be to another, but the baseline is that, hey, if it's traumatic to you,
Mhm.
it doesn't have to be traumatic to me to be traumatic to you, right? So,
Absolutely.
how has your trauma that you've come to work through that you experienced and come to work through, how has that shaped who you are as a person and drives you forward from
Yes,
today?
it has definitely helped me develop resilience in a way that is sometimes astounding to me that I have been able to build that because as early as I can remember, I always felt a sense of responsibility within my family to definitely have it all together. And in even as a child, because a lot of the trauma that I did experience was as a child, just a sexual abuse and molestation as a child.
Mm,
I internalized that a lot as a child to be able to um, deal with it. Obviously, as a kid that's 8, 9, 10, those things are really difficult to process on your own. But
sure.
we all know what comes with the grooming of a child in those experiences. It's like you can absolutely say nothing about this, and not feeling the comfort to be able to have those discussions with my mother. Instead, what I did was I told myself I was not going to be at 8, 9, and 10. I refused to be a victim. I remember saying that. Um,
Wow. That's
and,
amazing insight at 8, 9, and
mhm,
10 to be able to tell yourself that you're not going to be a victim, to have that
mhm,
internal fortitude at that age to know that what was happening to you, 'cause,
mhm,
you had to have a level of maturity at that
mhm.
point where 8,
Yes.
9, and 10-year-olds sometimes don't, that's just
No.
where they are developmentally, so, oh my
Mhm.
gosh.
And
Wow.
I would credit Oprah Winfrey for that because I watched Oprah as a kid. I don't know why I was always drawn to it, and I've always been drawn to human behavior and to people in
Sure.
general. So I remember watching an episode. She had a guest on that had multiple personality disorders, and because I was kind of experiencing some difficulties within with my trauma, things that
Yeah.
I was having nightmares and things like that, like in my mind. This was interesting to me, to have these voices inside, and I remember through watching a lot of the shows that she aired during that time. We're talking a late 80s or so. um I said, I have to push through whatever this is that's going on, and I will be successful, and I will not be a victim. So I really credit that to my frame of mind during that time as well.
Wow. How
Mhm.
long did you keep that inside before you actually started talking about the fact that you had, that
Mhm.
you were molested as a child?
Yes, very long time. It wasn't
Yeah.
until my 30s that I started to be more expressive about it. When I finally told my mother about it, in
Yeah.
conversation, that's about when I finally opened up and then spoke about it.
Wow. I bet that
Mm.
was a difficult conversation to have.
Yes, it was a difficult conversation to have, but it was such a relief to be able to just let it go.
For
Um,
you, relief for you? Yeah,
Absolutely.
I bet.
And I do a lot of work within the community, as a community advocate. I work with a law enforcement agency, and we respond to sexual assault cases often. And so that also was my way of giving back and understanding a lot of these victims as well, and being able to communicate with them in a way that I know that they would understand emotionally and physically all the struggles that come
Mm.
with that. So,
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful that you can turn something that's tragic into something that's useful and you can
yeah.
help somebody else as well. I think all of us deep down, if we've experienced something that out of our deepest depths of, despair, trial, trauma, we can always within us find the strength to turn it around and make something good out of it. I
Yeah.
mean, it's not easy, it's
Mm,
definitely not easy. You talked before about giving grace to
mhm,
yourself, both to yourself and to others as well. And you emphasize that as part of your journey,
mhm,
through life's difficulties. How do you cultivate a mindset of grace in
mhm.
challenging situations where it might be difficult to cultivate grace
Yes,
there?
yes. Well, first and foremost, my spiritual backing is what really encouraged me to be at a place where I could give myself grace, because I had developed an attitude of perfection. Everything had to be perfect, and I had to do everything just right, because I had this sense of responsibility to my mother, especially because she was going through a lot of difficult things that I've seen through my childhood. And so knowing that as well made me give her grace and help me understand that it wasn't intentional. Her
Mhm.
inability to connect with me wasn't intentional, because her focus was on my other siblings who needed her more. And those were always her words: they need me more.
Mm.
They weren't as responsible and as focused and as mature as I was. And I'm the baby. So that was a difficult position to be in. But I learned, having that spiritual backing, that grace was important in order for me to get to that place of joy. And that's right. And I wanted to be there so badly that I said, I have to find that grace. So to shower myself with grace and be able to forgive others and give them grace through their difficult times.
You mentioned about joy. So, as you gave yourself that grace, how did joy start to manifest in your life? What did it look like? It's not just a happiness. That's I guess where the question's coming from. Happiness is like sometimes happiness is like I've heard it say like that bully in the schoolyard. It draws a line and says, "Okay, you got here, but now you're not happy. Now you have to draw another line." And there's
Mhm,
happiness, there's joy,
mhm,
there's a
mhm.
contentment. What do all those mean for you, and how does that look like now in your life?
Yes, freedom. If anything, that's just the freedom to be able to live life in such a way that I am not putting that pressure on myself, and I'm not putting that pressure on other people. So knowing that joy meant for me not just personal, what was going on inside of me, but being able to create an environment around me that added to that, and made it a more peaceful experience, to live. I was listening, and I don't want to get too far ahead because I know there's three questions you usually ask.
Oh,
If we're
it's all
talking
good.
we're talking about joy. The book that changed my life was the Book of Joy,
Mm,
by Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu. And within it, there's so many aspects to it. It's how you live your life, how you show compassion and kindness to other people, how you have a spiritual practice or routine, something that is going to continue to feed you. So joy for me, it is all those things.
yeah, it's okay. You can go ahead on the questions.
Well, we were
It's all
talking about
it's
it,
all
and
about yeah, it's all fine. You know what, sometimes we just find those books in our lives that just you read them and it's like I can point to a pivotal moment in my life in that particular book. And is that something that kinda drove you a little bit? Because, like we were talking about before, to become an author, you have
mhm,
there's something inside of you to want to put your story out there and put it pen to paper. What was
mhm,
your catalyst that kinda, like, drove you and said, "Hey, you know what? I'm gonna write this book."
mhm.
And yeah, here it
Yeah.
is.
My love for serving others and being able to impact some people's lives in a way that is deeper. So I in within my community and what surrounds me here close to home, I know I have been able to make an impact, to the fact that Fox 35 News Orlando recognized me with the Care Force Awards for my work within the community. So
Right.
that kind of solidified, like I'm walking in my true purpose and calling. What I'm supposed to do is help people. I've always had a love for serving others. So I knew that it had to go beyond just the call of my local community. I felt like this issue is so deep rooted, that I have to reach the world by sharing my story in any way I can. So it has really been, and my book officially released May 14th. So since then, I have been able to provide advanced copies to select people. And then I had my book signing recently. And since I've been receiving messages with just the reading of the description of the book,
Mm,
people pouring, out their hearts to me and saying, I cannot wait to get into this book because we have so much in common, or I have experienced this, in my childhood, and I'm really hoping this book will help me heal through that. And it's incredible to see how many people need that, need that community, need someone who understands them. So for me, it was important to share my story for that purpose.
yeah,
Hmm.
how does that make you feel when you get those messages?
I there's no words to describe the way your heart just feels fullness.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it's a very melancholy feeling because you know the hurt that they are currently experiencing, because I've been there. But all the more confirmation that I had to just put it out there.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's exciting to get a message that says somebody is looking forward to reading your book and hopefully having it help them heal as well. What are some skills or some practical applications that you have in your book that can help people? You want to
Mhm.
share a few?
Yes, actually. So one of the things, as we come full circle, towards the end of my story, and I share a number of different things that I've experienced. I wanted to make sure that people felt empowered by creating some kind of routine in their day to day that would help them continue to build on that power that they have inside that they've not explored. So one of the things I mentioned in "Peace of Mind, Piece of Cake" is the chapter that the potential of your power is determined by the strength of your power source. And a lot of people don't consider that you can tap into something that will give you the strength that you need to be able to overcome difficult situations. And I think that's really important to be able to have that you can tap into to help you grow and heal. Another thing that I mentioned, I referenced a couple of books in my book that were really helpful for me. But another one was Jen Sincero's "You Are a Badass," and in it, there's a quote that says, "Everything you do on your journey contributes to where you're going." So feeling like sometimes life is not working, it's not panning out the way you intended to, is a part of the process of growth. And we all would like for things to work exactly the way that we want them to. But the truth is that we don't have any control over the things that happen in our lives. What we do have control over is how we respond, how we react to them, and how much we grow from those experiences. So there's a lot of talk in towards the end of the book with a lot of those skills and applications and strategies and things that they can do to get to that place.
I like that you mentioned power source. How do
Mhm.
you yeah, I think that's so cool. What are some or the definition of a power source for you? Or does your book go into explaining different types of power
Mhm.
sources or what you mean by that? I'm curious.
Yes, yes. So I certainly my spiritual backing is the number one power source for me. Just really tuning into the word of God for me has been empowering. The other thing is just acknowledging all the blessings that surround us, and in that, getting power from the beauty that we don't experience to the fullest in nature, and being able to connect not just with the world, the physical world, but be able to connect with other people and pouring into others as well, as a way to continue to ignite our power in that way. I feel like there is something to be said for the power that you get within growth when you are helping other people,
Mm.
and how much that can help you continue to grow and build on your own strength as well. So I tap into a lot of those things as I discuss the powers that we have that a lot of people don't even consider.
Yeah, that's a good reminder that
Mhm.
we can draw power from helping other people. I never thought about it that way. I've asked that question, I guess, a few times here or there, because we people can think of power as like being inside. Obviously, you can get it from God, you can get it from energy, but you can get it from other people too. Like there are
Mhm.
people that just radiate that positive energy that you just want to be around and
Yeah,
enjoy. So it's
yeah,
kind of just depends on where you are.
yeah.
What's one thing that you thought would be hard about going through your journey, acknowledging the abuse that happened and just kind of bringing that out? Because it's a process to recognize it and then bring it to the surface and then make it public. The
Mhm.
book is going to make that public. What's one thing you thought would be hard about that journey, but turns out it wasn't? And then flip it. What did you think would be easy about it and turned out being really more challenging for you?
Mhm. For sure, the way I knew, because I knew I had to be vulnerable and transparent, that really was hard. That I had to get to a place where um I had to be as descriptive as possible in terms of the emotional pain that caused, and so that meant that I had to go there um, in a way that I could reach people and they would understand. This is exactly how I feel because this is what I've experienced as well. So that was very difficult, and God bless the editors that are out here who serve as therapists even sometimes, and getting us to push beyond that, because I would consider myself an extremely private person. So this was really pushing myself out of my comfort zone for the sake of healing for others. So that surpassed the knowing that it surpassed my limitations, and I knew that I had to do this. So that was the difficult thing. And then it also became the easy thing to express at the end, because I knew that it was going to help others grow.
Mm.
So that would I would say it's the same for both. It was the hard thing that became easy. Because now I'm talking, and this is a prime example. Now I'm actually verbalizing. It's not just in print, but I'm able to speak about it more, in a
Yeah.
way that has become a lot easier for me.
Yeah, that takes a lot of courage to do that.
Mhm.
'Cause it's that vulnerability, like, it's sometimes easy to be vulnerable with people that are close to us because
Mhm.
they're close to us and we know them, but when you put something like a book out there, or even if you go on a podcast, now it's not private anymore, and now you have a vulnerability in front of an audience, and you don't know who's listening. So,
Mhm.
I think it takes a lot of courage for you to go do what you've done, and I've interviewed other authors as well, same thing, just to put your story out there, it takes a lot of courage to do that. What's something that very few people agree with you on?
That's a good question. Something that very few people agree with me on. I would say that it's okay, but people need second chances. That it's okay to give someone a second chance to improve. I think sometimes we're so hard on others who've hurt us
Mhm.
that we are just steadfast at our idea that a person does not um, deserve forgiveness. And so I think the majority of people who have been hurt are in that space. And that is a conversation, a very controversial conversation that I've had with a lot of people, where they don't feel that someone needs a second chance, that they deserve a second chance, they're not worth it. I think everyone deserves a second chance.
Hmm. I wonder, in the conversations that you've had, do people where they say, "Well, I don't think that person deserves a second chance," do you find that they actually forgave the person,
Mm.
and then they said, "Well, I'm just not going to go take this any further," or where does forgiveness fall in those conversations as you have them?
Yes, and that is a very healthy thing to do, especially because when we were talking about boundaries, it's important. Giving someone a second chance doesn't necessarily mean that you are going to invite them back into your space, but giving them an opportunity at least to express where they've had some difficulty, and being human about it. So there's this saying that says, I can forgive but not forget, and that's true. And for those who are able to get to the place of forgiveness, that's important, because forgiveness is a part of your own healing. The more you hold on to that, the more hard it is, the difficult it is for you to continue to heal on your journey. If anything, it's holding you back more than it is helping you. So I think second chances are also a part of that, that
Mhm.
we're able to say, okay, this happened to me, this person was not the best, in whatever experience it was that you had with them, but understanding that at the core everyone is flawed in some way. And
Right.
so being able to understand that also releases us of, a lot of the hurt and the guilt and the shame and all the things that pile on from that experience.
Sure. Do you think when somebody forgives someone that it's automatic that they should give them a second chance, or do you think you can have forgiveness and then say, "Well, that I forgive you, but
Hmm.
I'm going to keep you back here."
Yeah, no, I think there are a lot of people in my life that I have forgiven, and I've given a second chance to, and of course, sometimes they've even messed that up in terms of being able to continue to have a relationship and actually have that closeness with them. And that's where boundaries come in, and being steadfast and set on your boundaries, and understanding that you have to also respect your own energy and the things
Hmm.
that are going to
Yeah.
affect you. So that doesn't necessarily mean that you would need to have or continue a relationship with that person, but being able to forgive them and then move beyond it, establishing those boundaries is important.
Yeah, you talked about the importance of boundaries a couple times, and we mentioned about the boundary with your mom and, like, not texting back right away. What's one or two other boundaries that you had with your friends or others around you besides just that type of boundary? I'm just wondering what other boundaries look like in your life for you.
Yes, and I love that question, because that has been such an eye-opening experience for me, because I learned a lot about myself through the way I carried on in all my
Mm.
relationships. I always a people pleaser. I was always a people pleaser. I wanted to make sure that everyone was happy,
I'm rolling
and
my eyes because that was me. That's me too. Yes. Yeah. I think a lot of people can
yeah.
relate with people pleasing. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, no, I'm glad you mentioned that. And so what that meant was, oftentimes I was in spaces where, for the sake of just being within that relationship, and I knew that this person was going to enjoy this experience, I would go along with it, until I was disappointed one too many times when I didn't get the same in return. And so I remember making a mental note of that, and then saying, well, how can I not feel this way, this disappointment and discouragement? And so that meant that I had to stand on being open about the things that were not okay with me, and even removing myself sometimes, or just saying no, removing myself from situations, or saying, no, I don't want to do that, without
Mhm.
fear that they're going to be disappointed in me, and that's just going to affect me to the point where it's going to hurt me, or to feel like that's going to completely damage the relationship. Because the reality is, if someone is a friend to you, if they're a family member, if they love and care about you, they should respect that you may feel a certain way, or may not want to do something for your own sake. So I have really learned to step up and put myself first in those experiences too, in those relationships, which I think is important.
Yeah. How
Mhm,
what you're describing takes a lot of courage to
mhm,
do, to
mhm,
set boundaries in places where you didn't have those boundaries before. And while you were talking, I think of my own life as well, people pleasing, just going along with the flow, doing what other people want to do, but not getting the same kind of as fulfillment out of it. And as I said, it takes a lot of courage to turn around and say, okay, I'm not going to do that anymore because this is for me. What would your encouragement be to those who are listening and saying, "Okay, I see myself in what they're talking about. Boy, I need to set boundaries here, but I don't know how to do that." What did you do for yourself to find that courage to be able to set those boundaries?
mhm. First of all, I had to prepare myself for the response that I was going to get, because it can be very jolting for the person on the other side, when you've been very open all your life, and you never say no, when you go with the flow, when you say, oh yeah, absolutely, I can do this, even though you can't. Now all of a sudden, when you switch that up on them, it's very jolting for them. So preparing yourself for the disappointment, and knowing that that is not a reflection on you and who you are, that often is something that they have to process.
Mm.
They have to learn to understand you just as much as you've become, learn to understand the way they are, and how they move and function. So first and foremost, I would say that, I say this all the time, and it really has helped a lot of people who have come to me in those situations and come to me for advice. Lower your expectations. so that you don't get disappointed. And that has been the prime thought process for me in that change, is knowing that if I just reduce my level of expectation for this person, I know that they cannot show up for me the way I will show up for them, and be okay with that and move accordingly. The other thing I would say too is understand that that may require a shift in relationships. And that may be very necessary in order for you to grow and heal in your journey. Because sometimes we think, because we've known someone for over 25 years since elementary school, that that person is actually good for our growth and for our healing journey. And oftentimes it's not. And many
Did
times
that
it
did that happen to you? Did you lose friends along the way?
I've lost friends along the way, and I have also had a change in the kind of relationship. So it's, some people are still in my life, but not communicating as often as we did before. Like, they know I'm here for you if you need me, absolutely. But there are now boundaries that we've established. There are certain places that we're not going to go. I understand now that, I can't intermingle with you but so much, because you're not good, for me in that way, or in my growing
Mm.
and healing journey. And that's important. And that is one of the most difficult things for people, because not it's like having going through the process of grief. It's like a breakup in a relationship that was foundational for you in some way. But when you acknowledge that in your healing journey those things are necessary, it's easier to process. But it takes
Mhm.
time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it all takes time. Did you find those friends where you had to distance yourself? Was that a conscious conversation, or was that something that kinda happened over time and you just kinda stopped talking to them, I guess? Or not stopped talking to them, but
Mhm,
shifted the type of relationship that you had? Were they
mhm.
aware of that too, or was it like, how did
Yeah.
that go?
So it's two part in some cases, because everyone is
Everybody's
different.
different. Right, right, right.
Yeah, so depend if I knew this person was willing to have a conversation and we could have an amicable and civil conversation about it, absolutely we would discuss it, to the best of my ability. I would be able to express that conversation would determine whether or not we would be able to move forward, or where we would stand within our relationship, if that meant that we needed to cut ties or not. Some people, you absolutely know, are not ever going to accept accountability for their behavior, and you already know ahead of time that having this conversation with them is not going to be, it is going to affect you emotionally even more, and it's not going to be a healthy conversation, because you're not going to come to any understanding. And in those cases, it's important to know when you just need to slowly start backing away, and letting them understand that your actions mean, it is obvious that you can't be in the same space or have that relationship with them anymore. By that point, though, most often you've expressed your concerns, because when you start backing away from a relationship, by then you've made it pretty known to this person that you're not okay with things that are going on.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that because, sometimes we think we still have to hang on to these things because they're familiar and that
Mhm,
we don't want to hurt the other people's, the other person's feelings. And especially when you're a people pleaser, that's even
mhm,
worse. It's even
mhm.
harder to do that. But it goes back to what we were talking about before. Your number one self care is to take care of you first.
Absolutely.
In order to take care of you first, it's setting those boundaries or doing what you need to do to take care of yourself first. I think that's just so important. Um, Given, what you've walked through, if you could go back to your 8, 9, 10-year-old self and deliver a message to that little girl, what would it be and why?
Mhm. It would be, you are loved despite your feeling of rejection. You are loved regardless, and this is only temporary, but things will get better in the future. Hmm.
Wow.
I think, growing up, I knew. I knew that my mother loved and cared for us for sure. Um, but she was so deep in the hurt she was experiencing and living with my brother, and as I expressed in the book, was an alcoholic, and was addicted to drugs, and ended up getting deported. He was here in the United States legally. He had a residency status, but he got in trouble
Mm.
due with those drug experiences, and he ended up getting deported. That completely was the way that was the way that the trajectory of our life became. It was very difficult for her to have that relationship with us, because she was hurting so much inside for what she was going through with my brother,
Mhm.
that difficult for her to love us in the way that maybe we needed her to, because we were even witnessing a lot of these things, and it was hurting for us to be able to see her go through it. So I think having known that as a kid, that I was loved regardless, and that this was only a temporary situation, that was definitely something that I would have wanted to know in that moment. Yes.
Yeah, you talk a lot about your mom. How about your father? Was he in the picture or not in the picture?
Yeah, my biological father, and I expressed in the book that my mother, I'm a child survivor of domestic violence.
Mm,
Around the age of 2 or so, my mother decided to leave him, and she made preparations with a neighbor to help her escape that situation. He actually
oh, okay.
he put a weapon to her head and told her that she could not leave. And so she appeased him for the moment, knowing very well that she had to go.
Right.
And picked up, and we moved to we were living at that time in Puerto Rico, and we moved to the Dominican Republic. The father who he was the male role model in our lives, and that paternal figure that we needed, that made us feel protected, even in the midst of a lot of the chaos that was going on within our childhood. So yeah, that is really who I speak of when I speak of my father experience, because
Mhm.
I've not really had a relationship with my biological father.
And when did your stepfather come into the picture? You froze on me for a second and I didn't hear that. If you
Yes, yes.
shared that.
No, I didn't. My biological father, and I'm sorry, my stepfather and my mother married. We were four,
Okay.
about 4 or so. So, and that's a very interesting story in the way that they met, um, because he was a staple in the political party of Dominican Republic. He was a Secret Service agent for the then Dominican president, and he had he liked my mother long before they actually officially ended up getting back together and getting married. So that in itself is it's such a lovely love story that I
Yeah.
can't wait for people to read, because that
Oh, yeah.
I'm grateful for them being able to come back together even after all those years.
Wow.
Mm,
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for sharing that. I appreciate it.
absolutely.
And we talked about so I do have my core three that I ask. And the first one's I always tell everybody the first one's easy. The second one opens a Pandora's box. And the last one is just for everybody. So you already talked about the book, and that was I'm sorry, I forgot the title. The
You
joy
know
of
the secrets, Mama. Oh, are
no,
you
no,
talking
no, the joy. Yeah,
about
the book or resource that had a significant impact on you.
yes, The Book of Joy,
The book of
by
joy.
Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu.
Yeah, and, no, your book you know what? I don't think you ever answered the question. The title of your book is Enough with the Secrets, Mama. Was that the original title? And if like, how did you come up with that? Because it's such an interesting title.
Yes. No, it wasn't the original title. Originally, I was going for, I wanted to make sure that people knew the book. It was about my mother. So I can't even remember what the original titles were, because as I finished the manuscript, I said, no, I think this is more about understanding that as our parents sometimes keep secrets from us, and we think that they're doing that in a way to just to protect us, really is what it is. They're just keeping things from us to protect us, and we don't realize just how much that is a detriment to our relationship sometimes, when we need to be able to have certain conversations. And through our life, the more I continue to work on the book, the more it became evident that she kind of established this secret way of life, like she didn't tell us certain things. And then also sometimes we're very obvious, like we'll have conversations and she says, well, she'll say, I'm working on something, but I'm not ready to discuss it yet. So she will plant the seed, and then we're like, okay,
Oh,
so
okay. Yeah.
yeah, so a lot of
It's
that
like the
happened throughout.
cliffhanger. Yeah. They co
Yes, a lot
You
of
have to
that
come back
happened.
and yeah, they have to come back and visit me to get the rest of the story.
Right. But what's
Yeah.
interesting is now, goodness, the things that she is saying, the secrets she is spilling, and how interesting to now be at that place as she's getting older and wanting to share these stories. And I think this book, me writing it, also has encouraged her to do that.
I was just gonna ask that question. Did you writing the book helped her? You already answered that. Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes.
So, yeah, yeah, yeah. What's one question or topic that you wish I would have asked about, and how would you have answered the question or expanded on the topic?
Um, I would say a grief, and I think we maybe touched on that just a tad bit, but just the process of grief, because we experience grief in so many different ways.
Mm.
People think grief is just when you lose someone, but in reality, grief is a feeling that we feel often when things don't go our way, when we're discouraged, when life hits us with the most difficult of circumstances. I speak about my failure of in business as well, and how the grief of that, that experience was very difficult to get through, being able to lose your financial stability, at least temporarily, because you've invested so much into something. And in the same way, when you to lose something when you've invested so much into someone, is grief. So that would be the
Sure.
topic. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Another
Mhm.
podcast. We'll save that one for another podcast.
Yeah.
As we close, what is one small step that someone can do today that's gonna help them change their tomorrow?
Yes, I would say commit. Commit to your healing journey. It's tough, and it's not going to be easy, and you're not going to perfect, the ability to process a lot of what you're going to experience through that journey. But commit to it. Know that you're worth the growth, and get the book. I think that'll help. It'll be a great start to your healing and growing.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. I mean, surrounding yourself, getting the right person to
Hmm.
help you with your grief is
Yeah.
definitely or no, I'm sorry, not grief, but just to work out your problems too.
Mhm.
Yeah. So Lynn,
Yeah.
thank you for the gift of your time. I appreciate this. This was a lot of fun. Where can people find you?
Yeah, so I am on Instagram and Facebook under It's a Lifestyle. That's ISSA style. It's a play on It's a Lifestyle. It's a blog that I started, which is an inspirational blog, and the focus is to live your life in such a way that will bring you joy and encourage you. So there's a lot of encouragement that I share through my social media and on my website. The blog is www.issalifestyle.com. You can find me there for those who want to connect with me in business and all the things I'm doing within the community, and with my independent consulting. I'm on LinkedIn as Lin Green, so you can find me there.
Well, thank you. This was really encouraging. I'm looking forward to reading your book.
Oh, thank
I think it'd be a
you.
lot of fun. And, you just provided a lot for everybody listening. So I really appreciate you. Thank you so much for the gift
Yeah,
of your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Small Steps, Big Wins podcast. I value your time with me, and I seek to make every moment count. In order to make lasting change in your life, listening is usually not enough. So I want to ask you, what practical steps are you going to put into action today as a result of listening to this podcast? Remember, any step, any action, no matter how small, starts your journey to a big win. And if you're not sure where to get started, reach out to me and let's have a conversation. Until next time, love yourself, then love others. Peace.